What do you say, old chump? Are you going to do a sound check? No sound check today? Well, aren't we a diva? I'm sorry I interrupted you. I love you too. Now let's get unbothered.
Everything bothers him.
He's unbothered.
He calls it unbothered, but that's what's cute because everything bothers him. He's bothered. I'm a botherina.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Unbothered by Ty Rivera. That's right, it's Unbothered by Ty Rivera. I'm your host, Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. Baby girl was not feeling it today. I actually had to pull her out from underneath the coffee table to have her record that intro with me because she really didn't want to deal with it. And she's still sitting on the couch now. I mean, like, pacing on the couch. But, you know, she didn't feel like showing up to work. And I'm going to be honest, I have a problem with that because she has one job in this house, in this apartment, excuse me, in this rented apartment. She has one job. And that's to co-host Unbothered. And she doesn't even have to co-host the whole show. All I need her for is just the intro. And then she's out. She's a short timer in this play. But for some reason, that's become... And you should see, honestly, the way I dole out TREATS around this place. It is... This bitch hit the lottery. I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's what happened. She really did luck out. You know, and especially because my heart was still on the mend my heart was still very much broken from Bijou when I got her. And so, you know, she was very spoiled and remains very spoiled. And I don't think she really understands that, but what are you going to do? They're dogs. Anyway, you know, I wanted to tell you guys last week, but I forgot. The week leading up to last, between the Unbothered's, because if you remember what I talked about on the episode before that, I was talking about like dieting and how when you're trying to change your eating plan, you can't let anything just derail you completely. You have to, you have to get back on the horse, and whatever your plan is, just go back to your plan. And as many times you fall off the horse as many times as you fall off the horse. And then sometimes life just gets in the way. And that's the reason I wanted to bring it up again, was just really briefly to tell you guys that week started with Monday, because remember I was telling you guys how good I was being, and it was kind of a soft launch, you know, and so I wasn't, you know, worried about being as disciplined as possible yet. It was just kind of easing my way into it. I ended up jumping in a lot more than I thought I was going to, and I'm glad for that because that's what felt natural. But what I wanted to tell you guys was that following the next day, my niece hit me up because it was my great nephew's birthday. And well, she was going to be doing his cake because, you know, it was actually a couple days after his birthday. And she wanted me to come over, and, you know, I'm going to have a slice of birthday cake but I did have a small slice because, like, when cake comes around usually, and I'm not really thinking about the way I'm eating, I'll have a big piece of cake. I'm known for having a big piece of cake. And my mom buys the cakes with the roses on them, you know, and so I'll usually have like a rose. But I was really good and just had a small, like, you could almost call it a sliver of cake. It really wasn't much cake at all, especially for me. And I'm not really too big on sweets all the time, but when I'm in the mood for sweets, I'm in the mood for sweets. And then following that, you know, because I got right back on, you know, because I did cardio that day and did everything the way that I was supposed to, other than just having that slice of cake. But I didn't go crazy. I had a slice of cake, and then my parents buy these little, well, they always have these little Bluebell ice cream cups that are probably 6-8 ounces at the most. And so I had a vanilla ice cream with my cake. cake and ice cream is a tradition in our family for birthdays, and so and like I said, my niece's baby, I sometimes almost slip and call her my sister because that's kind of the way she was raised, because my sister was young when she had her, and then she was always at the house with us, and so you know it was his birthday, and he's only going to turn one once. I was like, I'm gonna have this piece of cake. And sorry if I'm seem a little tired. I'm actually not tired at all. It was just a yawn from, you know, I've been. Oh, and then also before I get to what I've been doing, Wednesday night of that same week, so 2 nights later, I had one Pepsi left over in my refrigerator. And I usually don't keep anything that's not going to be on my eating plan in my refrigerator or in my apartment, because that's where I'm most likely to slip up. Like the middle of the night when nobody's paying attention, which is just me here, but like what I'm saying, like it's like you're almost not even feeling like you're living in the real world in the middle of the night. Sometimes it's just like it's a time that really doesn't exist. Well, when you're asleep. So my version of the middle of the night was probably like 8. It probably was like 8 in the morning or something like that, because I fall asleep really odd hours. And so I had that one Pepsi. And I don't know, there's just something about a Pepsi, which I told you guys, when I first got back, I stayed with my parents for a little while. And that's one of the reasons that I got my own apartment, was because, my parents are cool and they love having me around and I love being around them. So I had open invitation to stay there for as long as I wanted to. And, I probably, I don't know if I would say I would have, because I don't know what would make me stay with anybody. I just feel like I'm too grown of a man to really stay at anybody's place long term. I've had friends offer me to live at their places and stuff like that, rent free, and that I appreciate it, but it's just not the way that I'm going to be able to live my life, because I want to be able to do what I want whenever I want to do it. I don't want to think about noise ever. With my parents, though, I don't ever have to think about that. When they go to sleep, they go to sleep, and they're upstairs. And when I was there, I was downstairs, and it's like a tri-level. So, there's the living room on what would be the ground floor, or that's the best way to put it, would be the ground floor. And then it's almost like a basement situation, but it's like it's a tri-level, so it's like halfway under, so the windows down there are like ground level, literally, like that's what you're looking at right there if you open up the windows on that bottom area, it's kind of like a basement. And so I didn't have to worry about noise or anything like that. But if I want to have company, if I want to have a date, my parents aren't like that, and I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that kind of stuff in their place anyway. I'm not trying to, like, if I want to hook up, because I have been not being on Grindr. I just don't have an interest in being on it. I don't know why that happened, but it's just one of those things where I feel like I'm busy enough, and I'm not looking for, like, I think I've talked about that with you guys before. Just like I've done so much of that in my life, like enough of the hooking up and sowing your wild oats type of stuff. So for right now, and I'm not making any promises and like, oh, I've sworn off Grindr, or I'll never hook up with anybody again, or that kind of stuff. But for right now, it's just really not on my mind. And I've been so busy lately. That's what I was going to talk about when I decided to just continue talking about the Pepsi, because I wanted to also say about that. I didn't go crazy and then just all of a sudden start eating whatever I wanted and drinking whatever I wanted after I had that Pepsi either. I had that Pepsi in the middle of the night. I woke up, I saw the can and remembered the memory. It's sort of like being drunk, you know what I mean? Like blackout. Because I wouldn't have, if I had thrown the can away, I wouldn't have even remembered unless I opened up the trash can and saw it. But, but I had left it, the evidence, on a coaster on my coffee table. I'm very big on coasters. But yeah, so I left it on my coffee table, and when I woke up I was like, oh yeah, I did have that Pepsi. But what I was going to say about my parents' place really quick, just to wrap that up, is that's one of the reasons that I also was like, yeah, I just can't stay here, because they always have treats and snacks, because my nieces and nephews, or my niece, I should say, has babies or kids, not babies. They're kids now. They're, high school aged. But then she has the one baby that's 1 year old. And then, and my parents' house is Nana's house, Nana and Tata's house. And so, of course, they're going to have snacks and sodas and stuff like that. So I like, one of my weaknesses, the reason that I had that Pepsi in the middle of the night, is also because ever since I was a kid, I've loved the feeling of, you wake up in the middle of the night, you're super thirsty, and you just slam a Coke or a Pepsi, a soda. You just slam it and it burns your throat. Like, there's that point where you're like, oh, that was too much. But I love that. I don't know why I love it so much, but I do. I love it. And so, that was another reason that I was like, yeah, I got to get my own place, because then I can be really restrictive about what I do and don't keep here. And right now I have it set up really well, as far as only having the stuff that that's on my plan. And I'm not feeling at all deprived or anything. Actually, I feel really good. And I've decided not to take my weight every day, but we'll get to that in a second. But what I've been trying to get at telling you guys is, lately, it's like life has been chill, but at the same time busy enough at different points where I really feel like I just have to be on autopilot. Like, the other day, I had an early appointment, early for me, because I had been editing all night. Because a lot of times people will think that I'm lazy, and I don't think you guys think that, but this is like, sometimes people, when I talk to them, strangers or stuff like that, and we're just talking about life, a lot of times they'll think that I'm lazy, because they'll be like, oh, you don't wake up till 2 p.m.? Because, that's a good average time for me to actually wake up. Sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's later. But, 2 p.m. is a decent average. So if somebody ever asks me, like, oh, well, what time do you usually start your day? I'll be like 2 p.m. And they'll be like, oh, my God, I can't believe you sleep so late. And okay, yeah. But honestly, I was editing until 8 a.m. So if I'm editing till 8 a.m., I don't know about you guys, but I don't know anybody that goes to sleep right after work. And even though I work from home, I actually do work. So if, if I wrap up with editing at 8 or 9 in the morning, and then I go to sleep at about 10, because I got to play with my girl for a little bit. That's, because I was telling you guys about that not too long ago. I make it a point to play with her at different intervals of the day. It's like a thing I have to do, because I don't want her to feel like she doesn't have a life. And I am all she has when it comes down to, like, a playmate, a buddy. So that's my job. I've got to take care of her. And so, or, I've got to make sure that she stays mentally and physically occupied enough and doesn't hate her life, isn't just, but anyway. So like I said, if I wrap up at 8 or 9 in the morning, and then I play with her until like 10 or 11, which I don't play with her the whole time. I play with her, I watch TV, I do whatever I want to do for that couple of hours. And then, I go to sleep at, like, say, even 10 or 11. And then if I wake up at 2 or 3, I'm still not getting enough sleep compared to what a lot of people would consider to be enough sleep. But I don't usually worry about that. And that's not unusual for me to sleep from 10 to 2. That's like a kind of a typical, let's see, 11, 12, 1, 2, 4 hours. Okay. That's kind of a regular thing for me, or like 9 to 2. Those will be regular. But then there's the other part where, if I just decide to take a nap at like 6 p.m. or even 3 p.m. Well, if I wake up at 2, I'm not taking a nap at 3. Well, sometimes I do. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes it gets pretty crazy around here as far as like, oh, you know what? I'm just gonna take a nap. Everything's done. I don't have anything that I have to do right now. And I have, my own, and that's the other thing. I'm getting better at scheduling my life, which this is the first time I've ever really had to do that, in that particular way. Because when I was doing stand up all the time, your schedule is kind of made for you as far as the stand-up part goes, because people hit you up. I have a show, it's at 8 p.m. I have a show, it's at 9 p.m. I have a show, it's at 10 p.m. And even if you do all 3 of those shows, because, that's not unusual, especially when I was in Austin, that wasn't unusual at all to do shows throughout the night like that. Sometimes you'll do as many as 4. Sometimes I did as many as 10. That's no exaggeration. 10 in one night. And it was paid really well. It was 10 shows in one night, but so your schedule is kind of made for you at that point. And at that point, I would sleep later or earlier. I slept whenever I wanted to in Austin as well, because it's like, well, my day doesn't really have to start until probably 5 p.m. And then I just go to the gym really quick. I do cardio, or I do weights, or I do whatever I'm planning on doing that day, and then get out of there around 6:30, get home, take a shower, because I'm never going to be first on a show. I mean, unless I request it, they're not going to put me first on a show. So the show starts at 8. That means that I don't go on till probably closer to 9, because when shows even start at 8, they never start at 8. That's the thing with comedy shows. I can tell you, after all these years of doing comedy, unless you're doing a theater or a casino, or a theater in a casino, the show usually isn't going to start on time. If it says 8 o'clock, it's usually going to start at 8:15, sometimes 8:30. And so if I'm supposed to go up either last or close to last in the show, or even in the middle, that means I don't have to be there till 9 o'clock. And that's the same with the 10 o'clock show, because I was telling you guys, that this is the way that works. So a 10 o'clock show for me means 11. If there's a midnight show, which in Austin there would be midnight shows, quite a bit, or enough there were midnight shows, and that means that I'm not going up till 1. So every time they give you, as far as what the start time is for the show, if you're me, you can get there an hour after. And I take full advantage of that. I tell everybody all the time, I'm not going to be there. Because sometimes they'll send you emails that are like, we ask that all the comedians get there at 30 minutes before the show. You please be there by 7:30 so we don't have to look for you or whatever. And I'm like, I send a message in a very polite way. I'm not like a diva about it in the way that I do it. I always send it in a polite way, in a respectful way. But the subtext to the message I send is, if you want me to be there that early, then let's just cancel me off the show, because I'm not. And I don't, like I said, I don't even allude to that in the first message. It's just sort of like, I'll send them a message and just be like, what time are you having me go up? Because my days are usually pretty busy, so I don't usually get there right at the beginning of the show, especially since people put me up later. And I've never had anybody so far give me a hard time about that. And if they ever were to, I just would not do the show. It's, because every once in a while you get somebody that kind of like halfway wants to power trip on you. And I'm always like, I don't have to be here. I don't know if you know, but I do not need to be at your show. So any kind of attitude, nope, save it. And that's when I will get, a little bit bitchy, is when people get bitchy with me. I'm fine to just be like, okay, we're doing that. Let me show you how that works. But yeah, what I was saying is, so sometimes I have to be on autopilot. Like, the other day I had an appointment that was early, and I have been doing my thing with cardio, which, if you guys don't know how it works, this is basically the way my schedule works when I'm doing everything the way that I'm supposed to and working out like I'm supposed to. Cardio will happen as soon as I wake up, or as close to as soon as I wake up as I possibly can. So I'll go do cardio. Right now I'm only doing 35 minutes worth of cardio. So I'll go do my cardio. I'll go do abs, which I do crunches for abs. And then I'll go ahead and come back and work on editing or ideas for the day or whatever it is I'm supposed to do as far as work goes. And then later at night, because during that time, I do everything. I'll run errands. If I recorded a video the night before, I'll edit it. If I've got to hurry up and record and edit in that amount of time to get a video out by around 9 o'clock, or if I'm lucky, earlier in the day, like 5, something like that, then I handle all of that. And because the gym that I go to can be pretty busy during rush hour times, I will not go back to the gym until nighttime. And sometimes when I say nighttime, I mean the wee hours of the morning. Like tonight, I think I left from doing weights around 1:30 a.m. So I guess technically it's this morning, but you guys know what I mean. But that's not unusual, for for me to get out of there at 2 a.m. or like then. And right now my gym is doing a really big renovation. They're almost done with it. But I really appreciate that during this renovation that has lasted a couple of days, and it has been a little inconvenient as far as, well, I don't even know that I would use the word inconvenient, because I haven't personally been inconvenienced. I would imagine during the day or earlier hours it can be pretty inconvenient because they're doing like things like the floors, redoing the floors and stuff like that. They had to move a lot of the equipment to different spots, and it's kind of on top of each other, and it's what it is. But when I go, and there's pretty much nobody there, because it's a pretty big gym. And like tonight, I want to say when I went there, at the most, when I first got there, there were maybe like 7 other people there. But it's not unusual when I'm there for it to be me and like 3 or 4 others at the most. And so I really appreciate them just staying open, and they're 24 hours, obviously. I really appreciate them just staying open and not completely closing down the gym to do the renovations. And, there's signs up that say kind of pardon our dust or whatever like that. And there's another location that's not too far from me, because it's a chain. There's another location that's not too far from me, but it's, I truly am a creature of habit. So I go to that location, and that's just where I would prefer to go. If I go on the road, I'll use another location, obviously. And I don't get like terribly thrown off by that. Actually, it kind of helps me feel like I'm not necessarily at home, but at least that I'm sticking to some sort of schedule. So I don't mind when I have to travel, and I have to use gyms in other cities. And it's something that I've done a lot of. And like I said, I feel like that, satisfies my being a creature of habit to a certain degree. Because, if you're a true creature of habit like I am, even though you'll keep it to yourself, if they close the gym for the renovations, it's going to make me malfunction a little bit for at least a day or two, and not all day. But when it's gym time, I definitely am going to be like, ugh, I have to go to another gym. I just want to go to my gym. Why can't I go to the gym that I signed up at? Well, technically, this isn't the one I signed up at. But don't be nitpicky. Please, you guys. Is that what we're doing? Is that what Unbothered is? Wow. Okay. I'm looking at you guys different now. I can't believe you really decided to. I feel like you guys came here to argue today. Is there something you want to get off your chest? Have you had a problem with something I said? Oh, let me address a couple things. I started off joking, but now let's be for real. One, I'm not at all offended by or whatever, but I'm going to just set it straight for you guys. And the other one got on my nerves. Okay, so there's a guy in my comments from last week that has decided that he's going to troll me and also troll the other people that are commenting. I went ahead and let it sit there for this week. But I will tell you that if you're back again, I'm going to go ahead and hide you from the channel, which makes it so nobody can see your comments. You can't do anything but watch. So, and that's because if you want to do that on my main channel, that's a lot of topics and opinions and stuff like that. And I don't mind people having differences of opinion with me, even on Unbothered. But what I'm not going to do on my podcast channel, which in case you hadn't figured it out, is very personal, is I'm not going to argue back and forth with anybody, and I'm not going to have anybody try to project onto me. And I answered his question because he was saying something about, like, since I did the story about the black comics and how they had tried to bully me when I first started doing comedy, like, that's why I'm so biased. And, like, but he had also put another comment that was something similar because, you know, you can, when you click on it, when you're on the creator side, one thing that sucks is you don't get to see every comment. It's just some get lost, you know, and some just don't show up. And a lot of people don't get that, is like, you know, you have no control over that as a YouTube creator. You cannot make it, or I have not figured out any way. And I've tried making it so that, you know, it doesn't filter any comments at all. I don't have any particular, because you can filter out certain words. Like if you don't want people to say certain things to you, you can filter those out so that they never show up. I don't use any of those filters. I don't at all, like, mess with that, you know, as far as that goes. I've been very honest with you guys. If I feel like somebody's disrespectful, truly being disrespectful, and I feel like it's completely unproductive and I see it, I will delete that comment and I don't care. But it really has to reach a level of a particular disrespect, and especially on the main channel. But here on my podcast channel, where it really is just me opening up and being honest with you guys, and there's no reason for me to lie about anything because there's no consequence to anything I would say. And that's what I don't think people really understand about a person like me, and that's living the kind of life that I live and has been living the kind of life that I live, is there's nobody that I'm going to get in trouble with. There's no, socially, I have nothing to worry about. Financially, I am not in jeopardy of losing things because I am saying my opinions that some people may not agree with. If you really look at the things that I'm saying, I'm not saying things that are hateful. I'm not saying things that are racist. I'm not saying, can things be taken that way if you're feeling that way? Yeah, sure. But I could also take from a lot of what I'm told that people are being homophobic and racist towards me. I choose not to because I don't really care. But when I'm talking on my personal channel just about the way that I feel about things and I will see, because like all of the things that people would think that they're gonna throw at me from Unbothered are things that I've examined personally. Like, is this coming from that? Because I think you should check in with yourself. And if somebody were to come at me in a friendly way and ask these questions, I'm fine with that too. But it's when it's the accusatory and, oh, I've got you figured out. I can already tell your thinking is basic enough that you would never be able to psychoanalyze me. And I'm talking to that particular person right now. Like, we just are not functioning on the same level. And I'm not trying to make myself sound like the smartest guy in the world. I only made it to the 9th grade. That's not a secret. Well, technically, I made it through the 9th grade, and then it's when I quit. But I got a GED. I never pretend that I'm some super intellectual, And that was something that they accused me of, was intellectual dishonesty. And it's like, okay, well, we can play that game if you want to. But when it comes down to it, I quit going to school because I got bored. That's why I quit going to school. And I felt like there was nothing else I was going to learn there. And if that was the right path for other people, I 100% get that. I 100% respect that. But even though I don't pretend to be the smartest guy in the world, I also don't think that I'm dumb because I chose not to continue with school. I just, at a point, like I said, I was done and my life was too fun for that. And with the way everything's turned out, I think I turned out to be right in not going to school, because there's nothing that I would have needed a degree for. There was nothing that I needed to finish high school for. And technically, a lot of during that time was when I got the life experience that I talk about, and a lot of the tools that have helped me get to where I am now in my life. And so when I bring up the fact that, the black comics would bully me, I don't have any negative feelings about that. I technically am thankful for that because I think that it made me stronger. And I don't necessarily recommend everybody run around bullying people. But I do think that some of that does make you stronger. Some of that makes you really examine within yourself if you want to do what you're doing, if it's actually worth it. And I knew from the beginning that I wanted to do stand-up. There was no question about that. But did I really want it? Was I willing to show up even while I was being bullied, even while I felt like an outcast? And the truth is, I really did, even though it would occur to me every once in a while that maybe I should just quit. Maybe I'm just not cut out for it. And so I don't hold hard feelings about that, and I especially don't hold hard feelings towards the black community. But what I see from the black community in a lot of cases is, in my opinion, self-destructive, self-sabotaging. So it's the same with LGBT, a lot of what I see from there is, and even when the person commented to me, even though they were a little disrespectful in the way they put it, I'm willing to let that go. Just be like, whatever. I mean, I responded. If you guys want to search the comments from last week, there's not a lot of comments, but you'll see I did respond, which there's enough. I appreciate what it is, but this channel isn't about high views. This channel, I do nothing to promote this channel other than once in a while I'll put the post up that says, hey, Unbothered is going on right now. Watch the live, or, watch the live chat, or, check it out if you get a chance, because I want people to know about it. But if I wanted it to get actual views, I would really promote it, and I would have a subject that I was going to talk about, and I would at least have an idea of what I wanted to talk about, and it certainly wouldn't be an hour long. None of those things would be good for my format, the way that I do things, if I want, for a fair amount of people to pay attention to it. It's just, that's not what this channel is about. This channel is about having a chat with the hardcore botherinas, as I like to call you guys, the people that watch Unbothered, the people that are fans of my main channel and want to know about the personal me. And so there's no benefit to me being dishonest or saying things any other way than they are. And like I said, I don't care when people come at me with that. But then when I see that you're also commenting on at least one other person's thing, oh, you think this liar is being honest with you, or whatever you're saying, and it's what are you doing right now? I don't know what you've mistaken this for, but harassing other people, because again, if I wanted just views, I would be completely cool with that, because obviously that's engagement. There's a chance the person's going to argue with you, and then you guys are going to have a back and forth, and other people are going to see that. That's not what I want this channel to be about. That's not what I want my main channel to be about either. But on the main channel, because I do talk about, a lot of current events and things that are just happening in the news, I get that that's the nature of the beast. People are going to disagree. People are going to troll a little bit. People are going to go back and forth. All of that, have at it on the main channel. But this channel is about chilling, and I don't think that a single person on this channel wants to argue with anybody else in the comments. I just don't get that vibe. And I do actually pay attention to the comments. You know, I scan them. I like I said, sometimes I'm too tired to read and respond to all of them, but I check out. I get the general vibe, and sometimes I go on a spree and try to respond to as many as I can. But again, the reason that I've been going on autopilot lately is because I've added more duties to what I'm doing, and I've actually got somebody right now that's helping me out as well, and that's going to be, but he just started 2 days ago, and that's going to be super, super helpful. You know, it's going to take some, and he's not even tasked with a lot of things right now for me. But what he's doing is going to be helpful. And so it's gonna allow me to relax. But for right now, there's also that where we're learning to work together. And, you know, there haven't been any hiccups or anything like that. But it's just whenever you add something new to the mix, then you both need to learn how the other works. You know, like he's got his way he works and I've got my way I work. And I know that it'll be easy. We've known each other for a lot of years, you know, and he's not gay. We're not dating. It's not anything like that. It really is work. But we've just been friends for a lot of years. And so, but my point is, it's like I don't get to answer everything, but I do check the vibe. And on this channel, everybody's just kind of chill, and everybody understands that I'm just being a human being. I'm telling you about, you know, my experiences growing up, about diet, about why I say the things that I do on the main channel, and how I really feel about things, and, you know, where certain things like do, you know, like in some cases where things for me even did start. And I'll admit that too. You know, but whenever, the thing I've noticed that with marginalized communities, when you're at all critical of them, it immediately becomes that you have to either have some sort of bias, or it's just outright racism, or it's some sort of prejudice. And sometimes it's like, no, I'm just actually looking at the behavior. Like that's what a lot of people aren't getting, is that people are looking at the behavior. It's like if you were to say something about me personally, I wouldn't immediately jump to, oh, well, clearly you hate gay people. I mean, like the reason that, like, you notice that I haven't said that? You notice that I haven't said in this chat about this particular person, I haven't said that I think it's because they're secretly homophobic, or I think it's because they secretly don't like Mexican Americans or Latinos to be more. I didn't say that because I don't feel that. I don't feel like any criticism of me is attributable to some sort of hate. But I do think that some people get triggered because I don't hold back in the things that I'm saying, and I don't sugarcoat things. And I think that with the way political correctness was for a long time in this country, certain groups got very used to not being questioned and not being called out when other people noticed their bad behavior or the bad behavior of their community. And now that that's coming to an end, people are getting very, very upset. And still, like, it's almost like in a movie when you see somebody like slipping in quicksand and they're just grabbing at anything, whether it's a twig or a tree branch or anything they can. Like, that's where people are, the people that love to live in victim mentality. And whether that's LGBTQ, whether it's a race thing, whatever their marginalization is, or whatever the tool of their marginalization is what they're clinging on to, as far as wanting to, like, throw that at everybody. And, like, I keep telling people and they don't want to hear it, but I am a really good indicator of when society is done with people. And I think a part of that is because I really don't pay attention to things until they start to actually, well, until I see, like, I'm really good at that part, because I saw this coming with the trans community specifically. Let's talk about that for a second. I saw this coming back really in 2010 was when I first noticed that it was like, okay, this is a little, like, it's turning a little unbearable. And I had transsexual friends. Like I said, I have transsexual friends to this day from 30 years ago. And so, like, but it wasn't obviously my friends. And that's how I knew that the things that these people were saying weren't correct or didn't have to be the way it is or aren't the way that it is with a lot of this stuff. Because I was like, how is it? I know people that are of this experience, and in 30 years, we've never had this chat, or there's never been even alluding to this particular thinking. And I know thinking can vary or whatever, but when it comes to like what a thing is, that's just not, like, I bring it up all the time, but the being so adamant about trans women are women. No, trans women are trans women. And every trans woman I've ever known has acknowledged that because it's such a big part of their lives. They do have to take hormones. They do, well, sometimes they go off their hormones for a little while, depending on what their budget is, depending on what the situation is with doctors. Like when I was younger, sometimes it was hard to even for the trans men and women, and I was mostly hanging out with trans women at that point, to even find a doctor that would prescribe cross-sex hormones for them. Like that's what it was like when I was younger. So there were some people that were trans and identified as transsexual, but really hadn't been medicalized at all. It was all basically a social transition, but they wouldn't tell anybody because they wanted to, fly under the radar. And to varying degrees of success or passability, but that's just the nature of the beast when you're not able to afford surgeries, or you don't have a doctor that'll prescribe it to you when you don't have resources. And that's where a lot of people were when I was younger. But now things are a lot different than that. But, and like I've told you guys before, my friends, the close friends that I have, that I've had the whole time, they've always been advanced as far as figuring out how to be able to get their hormones, figuring out how to make the money for their surgeries, because it's very expensive, all of it that they go through. It's very expensive, making the connections that they needed to make to do the things that they needed to do. Like all of my friends were really good at that. But anytime that, we really discussed gender, which was almost never, because we all knew what was up. I knew they were trans women, they knew I was a gay man. What's to really talk about as far as that goes? Now it seems like that's all some trans people talk about is their transition and whatever. Like we would talk about things like that, but it was very matter of fact. Like one of my friends would be like, she was on a particular a cross-sex hormone that like had her crying all the time. And then once in a while I would ask like a very direct question. Like I once asked one of my friends like what it feels like for her to be on hormones. And she just said that it just feels very calming for her, and it just gives her a sense of peace. Like it's almost like that is something that's missing in her particular chemistry. And so it really does even her out, which even though some people would say that doesn't make sense, and I'm willing to listen to anybody on any of that stuff when they're willing to talk like a civilized adult with common sense. I'm not trying to act, but I do know the only thing I can relate it to is I do know that since I've been on testosterone, because as you get older, sometimes you need to replace that. Some people never do, but my levels were low, and I had the way that I even knew that was because I had the symptoms of low testosterone, which is like brain fog, like constantly feeling fatigued, not that kind of fatigue, but constantly feeling fatigued. Like there's a lot that happens with your body if your hormones are out of balance. And since I had a resource, this was in Austin, I had a resource and everything like that. A resource, a recommendation, a friend, or a couple of friends, actually most of Austin. A lot of Austin is on testosterone, well, especially like, in my age range, my colleagues. But so, I went in and got tested and it was correct. My testosterone was low. And at first it was very low, it was way out of the range. And so they got that straightened out. And then for a little while, when everything went haywire with Bijou, because that doctor wanted me to go all the way out to him in Round Rock every week. And I had been doing that for months. But Round Rock, because I lived in Austin, and Round Rock is like 30 to 45 minutes depending on the time of day. And I'm having to go there every Wednesday. And so at a point when I was trying to take care of Bijou, I'm taking care of Bijou, and then I'm having to go across, not even town, but kind of to another town, because Round Rock is a suburb. And, and like, I'm not exaggerating when I say 30 to 45 minutes to get there. And that's that's one way. So it's an hour and a half to an hour, depending on, again, time of day. So that's a lot of time. And for me to be away from Bijou and trying to do everything I needed to do for her at that time, and it just, I couldn't do it. And so I asked the doctor if he'd be willing to just, let me self-inject. And he said that he was not willing to do that because of insurance reason. That's when I when I started not to like my doctor, is because he had been really cool until I mentioned that. And then, because I don't mind if, because I don't know how the insurance works on that and stuff like that. I know I've been going to somebody for over a year now here in Arizona that has no problem just sending me home with 2 months worth of testosterone and 2 months worth of B12 shots. And, I inject myself twice a week and I haven't had any problems. And he just gave me a quick tutorial, and that's what they do with almost everybody that goes to that clinic. So I'm not going to argue that part. That part didn't upset me, that he was, wasn't willing to do that. What bothered me was, I know that there are men's health clinics, which are, in a lot of cases, testosterone is a lot of what they're dealing with, that and peptides and stuff like that. But, and he's been in that business for years now. And he's not cheap, and he's well respected. But I asked him, because, I'd explained to him about my dog, and it was just, I explained everything to him, and then I asked him if he knew anybody in Austin that he could recommend me to that would be able to take over and, like, either let me take my stuff home, or at least it could be a quicker commute for me to do it. And then he was like, no, I don't know any. And I was like, really? That's like asking me if I know another comedian in a particular city that I lived in at the time or live in now. And me being like, no. Just admit you don't want to give anybody else the business, and you think that if you keep that information from me, then I'm going to feel like I'm stuck with you. And one, that's not the way to keep business. And two, once I'm ready to be done with a particular situation, I'm going to be done with that situation. And so I just had to stop taking testosterone. and then, started dealing with the same, like it went to the same, but it wasn't as bad. I don't know if being on it for that while like kickstarted my natural testosterone as well, or my natural testosterone production. I know that it stops, but like on the comeback. And also, since I did it that way, I wasn't able to taper off. So who knows? I mean, like, luckily nothing really serious seemed to happen, but it might have, thrown some things off. But anyway, so my point with all this is I just tell you guys about my life here, and I didn't like that person that I mentioned in the comments decided to start to troll at least one other person. It's like, okay, well, it's bad enough you're not socially aware enough. This is another reason I know you couldn't psychoanalyze me, is because one thing that anybody that's ever met me in real life will tell you is that I am very, very good with social cues. It's one of the things that really impresses people about me. I've even had people mention it out loud. They're like, you're definitely a person that understands social cues. And I was like, yep, I know. I'm good at reading, situations and people and reading the room. And, sometimes I'll misbehave, but it's usually on purpose or just because that was a decision I made. It's not usually because I didn't realize it was that kind of, I'm not going to say that's never happened before, but it's very rare that it happens. But this person isn't able to read the room well enough to know that this isn't that kind of situation. And I do have control over whether or not you can comment on my stuff. And I will exercise that control if you can't control yourself. Hopefully he just doesn't come back because, But anyway, so there's that. And I test me. If you're watching right now, definitely do test me, because I will do it so quickly. And it's not going to be a back and forth. It's not going to be a final warning in the comments. I don't care what you say. I don't care how deep you think it is, whatever you say. I'm not even going to read it. Like, that's how used to social media trolls I am, is because people don't realize on the different platforms that I'm not new to anything. I've told you guys before, at a point I had a really, really strong Facebook presence. And I had a lot of opinions then, too. I've always had a lot of opinions. And people were mad at me and would really, really try everything to bother me. And now I've gotten to the point where I don't even read a lot of... Like, if it's negative and especially long... just tell me I'm stupid and move on. I'm not going to read all that. I mean, I'm not even curious to see what it says. I just look at it and I'm like, okay, that's more reading than I'm going to want to do right now. I know that for sure. And so I'm just going to delete your comment and I'm going to block you from being able to interact on the channel. That's what's going to happen. And the other thing, and this one is obviously not important at all. Like I said, it's just something sometimes people will assume. Somebody had mentioned that my face looked a bit swollen in the last episode and asked if my blood pressure, with the testosterone and all that stuff, I have my everything, like my vitals, my blood work. I have everything done all the time. There's nothing going on with me on the negative side health-wise at all. Technically, I have more checks going on as far as that goes than I really need to. The kidney situation, where I mentioned the kidney stones a couple weeks ago, I read up on that quite a bit. I would attribute it to extreme dehydration because at that time I was drinking a lot of soda. It's not the main reason that I decided to get my health back in check, but it was definitely a nudge towards that, because it was like, okay, well, I've been planning on being good again anyway, and now I have this, and it felt almost like a sign. And I wish it hadn't been such a painful sign, and I wish it hadn't been a sign that had a dollar sign attached to it. But nonetheless, I look at it as a sign, and now I've been doing everything the way that I'm supposed to. So if my face looks a little bit swollen, sometimes that'll happen from lack of sleep. Also, if you don't notice, I use soft lighting for this. I don't like light myself up with a ring light, even though this is sitting on a working ring light and I could do that, but it's unbothered. I just don't want to deal with all that. And I'm not worried about vanity on this channel either, or, making sure the shot looks a particular way or whatever, which you do have to worry about that stuff with the main channel because, like people actually are watching for the, like all of it, people expect it to look professional somewhat. But that's not what this channel is about. And so and like I said, this one is not at all like a threat or I'm upset about whatever. You're not, leave whatever comment you want as far as that goes. But one thing that somebody suggested was Botox. And I haven't had Botox in, I believe it's 6 years now. If it's not 6, it's definitely 5, because it was right after pandemic was the last time that I bothered dealing with Botox or fillers or any of that stuff. And I got fully juiced. A friend of mine works, and I do mean juiced. A friend of mine worked for a particular cosmetic surgeon here in Arizona. And it was such a great deal. I want to say that I paid like $4,000 and then got $8,000 worth of stuff, he was really good, and he evened everything out, and like this divot right here, he made that so it was like, just normal. But in that, because I had been dealing with fillers and everything, because when I had the silicone removed, I didn't like the asymmetry even in the healing. And so when I got well enough that I was able to like do stuff, when the doctor was fine with it, then I started doing things to like even that out. And then before that, since I had, like I said, the big ball of silicone, I've been getting injected during that time. And during that process, because, the amount of stuff that he put in me, he's a good doctor and he has really good technique. And so he wasn't like over injecting me or whatever, but he was doing things to make sure every line and crease that I didn't want was gone. And then Botox. And then I went to somebody else for my lips because I liked that particular person for my lips. Because my lips, I would have them evened out, and made a little bit bigger. But, during that last process, I remember sitting there and being poked with needles and just thinking, I'm done with this. And like I said, it was a lot. So he's sitting there like, and I have a high pain tolerance, and I know he was dazzled by that. And so there was a point where he kind of got on my nerves because he was going too fast, because he was just amazed that, like, I should have been in a lot of pain or should have been complaining or whatever. And there were certain things he did that did hurt, but he was so amazed by it at a point it almost felt like he was trying to hurt me, which I know wouldn't be very professional, but I'm saying in that moment, I don't think he was very professional. I think he was trying to see what it would take to hurt me at different points because he was just amazed by it. Which, don't get me wrong, I don't like pain, and this isn't a flex when I say that. I'm not asking anybody to put me through any painful situation, but I am saying that I have a high tolerance for it. And I've just always been that way, since I was little, that's been a thing for me. But I remember sitting there and just being like, yeah, I'm done with this. I'm tired of being poked with needles. And I know I mentioned like testosterone, but that's like one poke, and that actually does more than a cosmetic. Like, that's not, the testosterone is not about cosmetic for me. If it were about cosmetic, I would be on a much higher dose, which at some point I may discuss my dose with you guys, because why not? But it's not, it's minuscule. It's only to get me to the right, because like I told you guys, I don't know if like my body had started producing more or what happened, but for some reason, I'm on a lower dosage now than I was on in Austin. Except, and also a thing that they decided to do was where I said in Austin they were having me go once a week. They have me inject myself here at home twice a week, and they say that that gives you a better result. But again, it's still not the twice a week I'm doing now doesn't add up to the once a week I was getting in Austin, if that makes sense. And so, but to answer the question, I haven't had any Botox. I haven't had any fillers in, like I said, it's been what I say, like 5 or 6 years, and since right after pandemic. So whether that was 20 or 2021 would have been right after. So yeah, 5 years. And I like I'm not saying I would never do anything again, but I have no interest in thinking about it now. And my forehead wouldn't move like it does if I were getting Botox. And some people will think like my lips are Botox, which I've never heard of anybody getting Botox injected in their lips in my entire life. I don't have anything in my lips right now. Like I told you guys, like I've had my lips reduced twice because when I was younger, I had silicone injected in them, but I tried to get rid of as much of that as I possibly could. And so at this point, these are just my lips, and I'm not at all injected with anything. So stay unbothered.